The verdict of exile. The grand chamber of the Galactic Assembly stretched upward into darkness, its curved walls lined with viewing platforms that held representatives from 417 worlds. Captain Marcus Reed stood alone on the central platform, his gray uniform a stark contrast to the kaleidoscope of alien forms surrounding him. Above him, holographic displays showed Earth from orbit, a blue jewel that had taken humanity 53 years to finally leave behind when they discovered faster-than-light travel. Today, that achievement meant nothing. High Chancellor Vorath of the Zentari Collective raised 3 of his 6 arms, calling the chamber to silence. His species had been spacefaring for 12,000 years, and he wore that history like armor. His voice resonated through the translation matrix, reaching every being in the chamber simultaneously. Captain Reed of the species Humanity, you stand accused of 17 violations of Assembly protocols. How does Earth answer these charges? Marcus kept his expression neutral, though his heart hammered against his ribs. He had known this moment was coming for months. The signs had been there in every diplomatic meeting, every trade negotiation that fell through, every military cooperation request that went unanswered. High Chancellor, Earth acknowledges the incidents in question, but contests the interpretation of our actions as violations. A ripple of discontent moved through the chamber. Ambassador Thesic of the Aquarian Federation rose from her platform, her translucent form shimmering with agitation. You established colonies in 7 unclaimed systems without filing proper exploration permits. You made first contact with the Draven species using armed vessels. You refused to share your jump drive modifications with the Assembly technology pool. Marcus turned to face her directly. We colonized uninhabited systems that your surveys marked as unsuitable for life. We approached the Draven with defensive escorts after pirates attacked our science ships in that same sector 3 times. And we offered our jump drive improvements to any species willing to participate in joint development, which every single Assembly member declined. You speak of defensive measures, Vorath interjected. Yet your fleet has grown by 240% in 5 years. You build warships, not exploration vessels. You train soldiers, not diplomats. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Marcus had prepared for this moment, rehearsed his response 1,000 times. But standing here, surrounded by species who had decided humanity's fate before the trial even began, he felt the weight of inevitability crushing down on him. We build what we need to survive, Marcus said quietly. The galaxy is not as peaceful as the Assembly pretends. Pirates raid our shipping lanes. Slavers target our outer colonies because we're new and perceived as weak. When we call for Assembly assistance, help arrives weeks late if it arrives at all. So yes, we build warships. We train soldiers. We do what we must to protect our people. Chancellor Vorath's expression hardened. The Assembly has maintained peace for 6,000 years through cooperation and mutual understanding. Your species has been among us for barely half a century, yet you act as though our methods are failures. Marcus felt something shift inside him. The careful diplomacy he had maintained for months suddenly felt like a cage. These beings had never intended to give humanity a fair hearing. They had been afraid from the moment human ships appeared in their space, and fear had curdled into contempt. Your peace, Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber, is built on the backs of species like mine. New arrivals who don't yet understand the unwritten rules. Frontier worlds too far from Assembly cores to receive protection. The Assembly maintains peace in its heart while allowing chaos at its borders. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Delegates shouted over each other, their translation feeds creating a wall of sound. Vorath slammed his lower arms on his console, demanding order. Enough. The Assembly has heard sufficient testimony. We will now vote on the motion to revoke Earth's membership status and expel humanity from civilized space. Marcus felt his stomach drop. This was happening faster than projected. Earth's diplomatic corps had estimated at least 3 more sessions before a vote. The holographic displays shifted, showing the voting matrix. One by one, worlds cast their judgment. The Zentari Collective voted for expulsion. The Aquarian Federation followed. The Krell Dominion, the Phaedron Unity, the Merchant Guilds, all voted the same way. Marcus watched the numbers climb with a kind of detached horror. 200 votes for expulsion, 300, 400. When the final tally appeared, the silence in the chamber was absolute. 412 votes for expulsion, 3 abstentions. 2 votes against. The motion passes with overwhelming consensus, Vorath announced. Humanity is hereby expelled from the Galactic Assembly. All Earth vessels must vacate assembly space within 90 standard days. All trade agreements are void. All diplomatic privileges are revoked. All joint facilities must be abandoned. Marcus stood very still, letting the words wash over him. 90 days to evacuate 300,000 humans from assembly stations, research outposts, and colony worlds. 90 days to sever every connection humanity had built over 5 decades. Captain Reed, do you wish to make a final statement before departure? Marcus looked up at Vorath, then slowly turned to survey the entire chamber. 417 worlds united in their rejection of humanity. He thought about the official response Earth had prepared, the careful words designed to leave doors open for future reconciliation. He decided to speak the truth instead. You claim we're too aggressive, too militaristic, too unwilling to follow your rules, but your rules were written by species who never had to fight for survival the way we did. You evolved on peaceful worlds or were guided into space by benevolent mentors. Humanity clawed its way up from a planet that tried to kill us at every turn. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars that nearly destroyed us. We didn't have the luxury of learning patience before we learned strength. Marcus gestured to the viewing screens showing Earth. You fear what we might become, but we fear what we already know you are, a coalition so comfortable in your ancient peace that you've forgotten how to defend it. When real threats emerge, you debate and discuss and form committees while people die waiting for your help. The chamber had gone silent again, but this time the quality of the silence was different. Some delegates looked angry, but others looked uncomfortable. You're casting us out because we remind you of what you've lost. The will to act decisively, the courage to make hard choices, the strength to stand alone if necessary. Marcus smiled, and there was no warmth in it. You think you're punishing us by exile, but you're setting us free. He tapped his communicator, signaling his shuttle for immediate departure. 90 days, you said. We'll be gone in 30. And when the galaxy remembers why it needs warriors instead of bureaucrats, don't come asking us to save you. Marcus walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. Behind him, the assembly erupted into chaos, but he didn't look back. He had one message to send, and it had to reach Earth before anyone could intercept it. His shuttle launched from Concordia Prime 30 minutes later. As soon as they cleared the station's jamming field, Marcus activated the quantum relay. This is Captain Reed to Earth Central Command. Authorization Reed Alpha 77. Execute Protocol Exodus immediately. They voted for expulsion. 412 to 2. There was a pause, then Director Elena Vasquez's voice came through, steady and unsurprised. Copy that, Marcus. Exodus is active. How long do we have? 90 days officially. I told them we'd be gone in 30. We'll be gone in 20. Vasquez's voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. Operation Horizon stations are fully operational. The remnant sites are secured. Our new allies are waiting. Let the assembly have their precious peace. We've got an empire to build. Marcus felt something tight in his chest finally loosen. Earth hadn't been caught unprepared. While diplomats like him had been playing the assembly's game, others had been preparing for this exact outcome. What about our people in assembly space? Marcus asked. 300,000 civilians, already being evacuated through secondary channels. We've been moving people and equipment for 6 months. The assembly is watching our official transports, but they have no idea about the private vessels we've been chartering through third parties. The shuttle accelerated toward the jump point that would take them home. Marcus stared at the stars beyond the viewport, at the vast darkness between galaxies that humanity was now free to explore. The assembly made a mistake today, he said quietly. They thought they were removing a problem, but they just removed the only leash we had. Vasquez's laugh was sharp and knowing. Let them realize that on their own. By the time they figure out what we've been building in the deep dark, it'll be far too late to stop us. Earth doesn't need the assembly's permission anymore. We've graduated from students to competitors. The comm channel closed. Marcus sat back in his seat and closed his eyes. Exile. The word should have felt like failure, like an ending. Instead, it felt like the start of something vast and terrible and magnificent. Humanity had been cast out of paradise. Now they would build their own. Forging the Imperium Director, Elena Vasquez stood before the assembled fleet commanders in the war room beneath New Terra's surface. The facility had been carved from solid rock on a world that didn't appear on any assembly star chart, hidden in a nebula so dense that conventional sensors registered nothing but radiation noise. 6 months had passed since Captain Reed's transmission from Concordia Prime, and in that time, humanity had transformed from exiled refugees into something the galaxy had never seen before. The holographic display at the center of the room showed humanity's new domain. 43 star systems connected by jump gates that used technology the assembly had never shared with newcomers. Colony worlds, mining operations, research stations, and shipyards that dwarfed anything Earth had built in assembly space. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elena began, her voice carrying the weight of exhaustion and triumph, "Operation Horizon is complete. All personnel and assets have been successfully evacuated from assembly territory. 307,000 civilians now reside in Imperium space. 0 casualties, 0 captures. The assembly still thinks we're scrambling to find homes for our exiles." Admiral James Torres, commander of the 3rd Fleet, allowed himself a thin smile. "They're tracking the decoy convoys we sent to the frontier sectors. Last I checked, they were placing bets on how long before we come crawling back asking for readmission." "Let them bet," Elena replied. "While they're watching those empty transports, we're establishing infrastructure that makes their oldest colonies look primitive. Commander Zhao, report on the remnant sites." Commander Lisa Zhao stepped forward, activating detailed scans of 3 planets in the Kepler sector. The images showed massive structures partially buried by time and geology, their architecture utterly alien even by assembly standards. "We've identified 17 functional remnant facilities across our territory. The species that built them vanished approximately 50,000 years ago, but their technology remains partially operational. We've successfully interfaced with 3 of the sites. The hologram shifted, showing a massive cylindrical structure that extended kilometers into a planet's crust. Energy readings pulsed along its length in patterns that suggested purpose, rather than decay. "This is Remnant Station 7 on Kepler 442b. Our linguists believe it was some kind of manufacturing complex. The interesting part is what it was manufacturing." Zhao pulled up technical specifications that made several commanders lean forward with interest. "Molecular fabrication at scales we've never achieved. They could assemble anything from raw atoms up. Ships, weapons, entire cities, all built to specifications that make our finest engineering look crude." "Can we replicate it?" asked General Sarah Mitchell, head of Imperium Ground Forces. "We're learning." The remnant left behind something like instruction manuals, though calling them that doesn't do justice to what they actually are. They're more like implanted knowledge, direct neural downloads of technical skills. 3 of our engineers underwent the procedure. They now understand gravitational manipulation at a level our physicists can barely follow. Elena watched the reactions around the room. Wonder, hunger, and calculation played across faces. The remnant technology was beyond anything the assembly possessed, and humanity had exclusive access to it. "That brings us to our first official alliance," Elena said, changing the display to show a species that looked like a fusion of insect and machine, the Cree mining collectives. "Captain Reed, you made first contact with them last month. Give us the summary." Marcus stepped forward, looking more comfortable in a captain's uniform than he ever had in diplomatic robes. "The Cree are fascinating. They're cyborgs, but not in any way we understand the term. Their species evolved in asteroid belts rather than on planets. They're natural vacuum workers who enhance themselves with technology out of practicality rather than transhumanism." The display showed Cree workers moving through a shattered moon, their bodies adapted perfectly for null gravity and radiation exposure. They moved with an efficiency that made human spacewalkers look clumsy. The assembly rejected their membership application 40 years ago, called them too artificial to qualify as a natural species. Bureaucratic nonsense that left them isolated and vulnerable to corporate exploitation. We offered them partnership instead of charity, full citizenship in the Imperium, access to our markets and protection in exchange for their mining expertise and knowledge of dead civilizations. They accepted immediately, Marcus continued. The Kree have been exploring dead worlds for centuries. They know where every derelict ship and abandoned station in this sector lies. More importantly, they found 6 additional remnant sites that we're now excavating. Admiral Torres whistled low. 6 more. If even half of them are functional, we'll have technology centuries beyond the assembly within a year. That's the short-term gain, Elena said. The long-term gain is proving that the Imperium isn't just for humans. We're building something the Assembly never could. A true multi-species alliance based on mutual benefit rather than hierarchical control. The Kree are our partners, not our subjects. The hologram shifted again, showing the Imperium's new capital. New Terra hung against the stars like a promise made solid. The planet was slightly larger than Earth, with 3 moons and a stable climate. But it was the rings surrounding the planet that drew the eye. A massive construction of stations and shipyards that would have taken the Assembly decades to build. This is home now, Elena said quietly. New Terra. Population currently 400,000 and growing daily. We've established 3 major cities and are terraforming 2 additional continents. Within 5 years, this world will support 10 million people comfortably. She turned to face the commanders directly. But we're not here just to hide in unexplored space. We're building an empire, not because we're conquerors, but because someone needs to do what the Assembly won't. Protect the weak. Fight the pirates. Explore the unknown. Be what humanity has always been. Survivors who refuse to quit. General Mitchell raised a hand. Director, what about the Assembly? They must have noticed that we're not where they thought we'd be. Our quantum communications are probably being monitored. They're tracking old relay signatures from equipment we left behind, Elena confirmed. As far as the Assembly knows, we're establishing primitive colonies in frontier sectors, struggling to survive without their infrastructure. They have no idea we're reverse engineering remnant technology or forming alliances with rejected species. How long can we maintain that fiction? Admiral Torres asked. Elena smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Until we decide to stop. Or until something forces the truth into the open. That something arrived 3 weeks later in the form of an emergency transmission from Frontier Station Zeta, one of humanity's last outposts near Assembly Space. The station's commander, Captain Rachel Park, appeared on the comm screen with blood running down her face and alarms screaming in the background. This is Park to any Imperium vessel in range. We are under attack by unknown hostiles. Repeat, unknown hostiles. Not pirates. Not raiders. Something else entirely. The transmission cut to external feeds showing the attackers. Elena felt her blood run cold. The ships were organic, pulsing with bioluminescence and covered in what looked like armor grown rather than built. They moved through space with predatory grace, ignoring weapons fire that should have destroyed them. They're not from this galaxy, breathed Commander Zhao, analyzing the feed. Those energy signatures don't match any known species. And look at how they're attacking. They're not trying to destroy the station. They're trying to consume it. The display showed tendrils extending from the organic ships, latching onto Frontier Station's hull, and dissolving metal like acid through paper. Where the tendrils touched, metal became something else, something that pulsed and grew and spread like infection. Get me every ship in range of that station now, Elena ordered. I don't care if it's a cargo hauler with a pop gun. We are not abandoning our people. Admiral Torres was already moving. Third Fleet is closest. We can be there in 4 hours. Make it 3, Elena said, and broadcast a message on all Assembly frequencies. It's time they learned what we've become. The Third Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at Frontier Station Zeta, exactly 2 hours and 47 minutes after Captain Park's distress call. What they found was a nightmare made manifest. 17 organic ships surrounded the station, their tendrils having consumed nearly a third of the structure. But the station was still fighting, its crew refusing to abandon their posts even as the walls literally dissolved around them. Admiral Torres watched the tactical display with grim determination. His fleet consisted of 23 vessels, including 6 of the new Eclipse-class destroyers built using remnant manufacturing techniques. The enemy had numbers, but humanity had something the Assembly had never given them credit for: the absolute refusal to accept defeat. All ships, weapons free. Target those tendrils first. If we can sever their connection to the station, maybe we can save some of the structure. The Eclipse destroyers opened fire with gravitational lances, weapons that compressed space itself into cutting beams. The organic ships reacted with surprised thrashing as their tendrils were severed, the gravitational weapons proving far more effective than conventional energy weapons. They're regrouping, called out Lieutenant Sarah Chen from Tactical. 17 contacts moving to engage us directly. They're abandoning the station. Good, Torres said grimly. That's what we wanted. All ships form assault pattern Delta. Let's show these things why you don't mess with humanity. The battle that followed would be analyzed by military historians for decades. The organic ships were fast, durable, and utterly alien in their tactics. But the Third Fleet fought with precision, born from training against every simulation the Assembly had ever shared, and a few humanity had developed in secret. The Eclipse destroyers proved devastating. Their gravitational lances tore through organic armor that laughed off energy weapons, but it was the Kree mining ships that delivered the killing blow. The cyborg crews used industrial cutters modified for combat, slicing into the organic ships with tools designed to carve up asteroids. Within an hour, 12 of the 17 attackers were destroyed. The remaining 5 attempted to flee, but human pursuit ships had been designed by a species that spent centuries hunting other humans across planetary surfaces. There was no escape. When the last organic ship exploded into biological debris, Admiral Torres allowed himself one moment of relief before addressing his fleet. Damage report, casualties, and someone tell me what the hell those things were. The answers came quickly. Minor damage to 4 ships, no casualties among fleet personnel. But Frontier Station had lost 117 people before the Third Fleet arrived. And another 43 were missing, presumed consumed by the organic attackers. Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Assembly, reported the communications officer, High Chancellor Vorath himself. Torres straightened his uniform and prepared to face the being who had cast humanity into exile. Put him through. Vorath's face appeared on the screen, and for the first time since Torres had known of the Zentari leader, he saw fear. Admiral Torres, we detected your battle near Frontier Station. We also detected the enemy you engaged. Vorath paused, clearly struggling with what came next. Those were Scourge ships, an extragalactic species that has been consuming worlds in the Andromeda sector for the past 3 years. The Assembly has lost 16 colonies to them. Our combined fleets have failed to stop them. Torres kept his expression carefully neutral. And you're telling me this because? Because you just destroyed 5 Scourge vessels that our best battle groups couldn't scratch. Because you used technology we've never seen before. Because... Vorath's voice dropped. Because the Scourge are heading toward Assembly core worlds and we cannot stop them alone. The moment stretched between them, heavy with implications. The species that had cast humanity out was now begging for help. I'll relay your message to Director Vasquez, Torres said finally. But understand something, Chancellor. Humanity is not the Assembly's emergency military anymore. If we help you, it will be on our terms, not yours. He cut the transmission before Vorath could respond. Around the bridge, his crew waited in silence. Set course for New Terra, Torres ordered, and send a message to Director Vasquez. Tell her the galaxy just learned that exiling humanity was the worst mistake the Assembly ever made. As the Third Fleet jumped to hyperspace, one question remained unanswered. If the Scourge had defeated every Assembly fleet sent against them, and humanity could destroy Scourge ships with relative ease, what did that say about how powerful the Terran Imperium had become? The answer would terrify the Assembly more than the Scourge ever could. When Titans collide, the OI War Council convened in the newly completed command sphere orbiting New Terra. Through the transparent aluminum walls, the Imperium's capital world hung like a jewel, its 3 moons visible in perfect alignment. But the beauty of the view stood in stark contrast to the grim faces around the strategic table. Director Elena Vasquez activated the holographic display, showing the spread of the Scourge invasion in sickening detail. Red markers indicated consumed worlds, spreading like cancer through the Orion arm of the galaxy. 23 Assembly worlds had fallen in the past 4 months, their populations either killed or worse, converted into organic matter for the Scourge's expansion. They're not raiders or conquerors in any traditional sense, Commander Zhao explained, highlighting the tactical data. The Scourge are transformers. They consume biological matter and technological infrastructure, breaking everything down to its component elements and rebuilding it into more of themselves. Every world they take makes them stronger. Captain Marcus Reed studied the projections with a soldier's eye. The Assembly's problem is their fleet doctrine. They've spent 6,000 years building ships for exploration and trade protection, not total war. Their vessels are elegant but fragile, designed with the assumption that any real conflict would be resolved through diplomacy. And the Scourge don't negotiate, Admiral Torres added grimly. We've intercepted every transmission the Assembly sent toward Scourge space. Dead silence in response. These beings don't want territory or resources in any conventional sense. They want biomass, and they don't care where it comes from. Elena brought up a new display showing assembly fleet movements. Despite suffering catastrophic losses, the combined forces of 400 worlds were preparing for a massive counteroffensive at the Deneb sector, trying to create a defensive line before the Scourge could reach core assembly space. They're gathering everything they have, Elena said. 9,000 ships from 300 different species. It's the largest military force in recorded galactic history. And it won't be enough, Marcus said flatly. We've analyzed their battle tactics from recovered data. The assembly fights like they negotiate. Lots of consensus building and coordinated movements that look impressive but lack decisive punch. The Scourge just overwhelmed them with numbers and biological aggression. General Mitchell leaned forward, her expression hard. So the question is, do we help them? The same assembly that cast us out 6 months ago now expects us to save them? The room fell silent. It was the question everyone had been avoiding since High Chancellor Vorath's desperate transmission. Humanity had every reason to let the assembly burn. They had been rejected, exiled, treated like barbaric children who needed to be removed from civilized company. There are 4 trillion beings in assembly space, Elena said quietly. 4 trillion people who had no say in expelling humanity. Children, families, civilians who just want to live their lives. Do they deserve to die because their leaders made a political calculation? No, Marcus said immediately. But neither do our people deserve to die fighting for beings who despise us. If we commit our forces to this fight, we need guarantees. Real ones, not diplomatic promises that evaporate the moment the crisis ends. Agreed, Elena said. She activated her communicator. Send a message to High Chancellor Vorath. Tell him I'll meet with him, but not on Concordia Prime. He comes to us, to New Terra. If the Assembly wants humanity's help, they negotiate on our ground by our rules. The response came within hours, faster than light speed should have allowed. The Assembly must have had ships positioned near Imperium space, waiting for exactly this reply. Vorath would come personally, along with the ruling council of the Assembly's 12 most powerful species. They would arrive in 3 days. The preparation for that meeting would determine the future of galactic civilization. High Chancellor Vorath had lived for over 400 years and visited countless worlds, but nothing had prepared him for New Terra. His shuttle descended through the orbital ring with its massive shipyards and construction bays, passing military installations that made his escort nervous. The planet itself showed development that should have taken decades, not months. When his delegation entered the Grand Hall of the Imperium, what they found there shook them to their core. The hall was vast but austere, designed for function rather than ceremony. At its center stood Director Elena Vasquez, flanked by Admiral Torres, Captain Reed, and a dozen other senior commanders. But it was the beings standing beside the humans that made Vorath's heart skip. Kree cyborgs in their augmented glory, Draven warriors who the Assembly had classified as too violent for membership, remnant scholars from a dozen species that had been rejected or ignored by galactic civilization. The Terran Imperium had gathered everyone the Assembly had cast aside and forged them into something unified and formidable. High Chancellor, Elena said, her voice formal but not hostile. Thank you for coming. I understand this represents a significant departure from Assembly protocol. Vorath descended from his platform, his 6 arms folded in a gesture of respect. Director Vasquez, the ruling council appreciates your willingness to meet with us given the circumstances of our last encounter. Let's not dance around it, Elena said bluntly. 6 months ago, your assembly voted 412-2 to exile humanity from civilized space. You called us too aggressive, too violent, too dangerous. Now you're here because that dangerous violence is exactly what you need to survive. The words hung in the air like accusations. Ambassador Thesic of the Aquarian Federation rippled with agitation, but Vorath raised a hand for silence. You are correct, and I will not insult your intelligence by pretending otherwise. The Assembly made a judgment based on fear rather than wisdom. We were afraid of what humanity might become, so we pushed you away. Now we need what we feared. The Scourge is consuming us, Vorath continued, his voice heavy with exhaustion. 23 worlds lost. Billions dead or converted. Our finest fleets shattered. We are 3 months from losing our core territories. And once that happens, the Assembly will cease to exist as a political entity. Elena walked slowly around the holographic display showing the Scourge advance. Your projected defensive line at Deneb sector will fail. Your ships are too slow, your weapons too weak, and your command structure too fractured. 9,000 ships from 300 species means 9,000 different tactical doctrines and 300 different chains of command. The scourge will cut through you like tissue paper. Then help us, Ambassador Thesic pleaded. Whatever our past disagreements, surely you don't want to see the annihilation of our peoples. Marcus Reed stepped forward, his expression cold. You keep saying our peoples as if you're one unified group. But the Assembly isn't a real alliance. It's a bureaucracy that pretends consensus equals strength. You spent 6,000 years congratulating yourselves on maintaining peace, while the real work of defending that peace fell to species like humanity. Species you rejected for being too willing to fight. Enough, Elena said, though not unkindly. We didn't bring you here to lecture you on your failures. We brought you here to discuss terms. Vorath felt hope and dread war within him. Terms? The Terran Imperium will deploy its full military force to stop the scourge, Elena announced. We will save your worlds, protect your people, and eliminate this threat. But in return, the Assembly will accept a new reality. She activated a document on the holographic display. It was labeled Charter of Galactic Security. First, the Terran Imperium is recognized as an equal power to the Galactic Assembly, not a subordinate member, but an independent authority. Second, all species currently under Imperium protection receive full diplomatic recognition, including those you previously rejected. Third, military defense of the galaxy falls under joint Imperium Assembly authority, with the Imperium having final say in crisis situations. Vorath read through the terms with growing alarm. What Elena was proposing wasn't an alliance but a fundamental restructuring of galactic power. Humanity wouldn't be returning as supplicants but as equals, perhaps even superiors in military matters. You're asking us to surrender authority we've held for millennia, Vorath said carefully. We're offering to save you from extinction, Admiral Torres corrected. Those are different things. You can keep your assembly, your councils, your endless debates, but when it comes to actual fighting, you defer to those who know how to win. The ruling council members looked at each other, communicating through gestures and expressions. The mathematics were brutal. Accept humanity's terms or face certain destruction by the scourge. Pride versus survival. If we refuse, asked Ambassador Thesic, then we defend Imperium space and let the Assembly fall, Elena said flatly. We have no obligation to save you. You made that clear when you expelled us, but we're offering you the chance to be part of something stronger than what you had, a true alliance where military strength and diplomatic wisdom work together, instead of pretending one can exist without the other. Vorath made his decision. 4 centuries of life had taught him when to fight and when to accept reality. The ruling council will need to vote, but I believe you'll have your acceptance. How quickly can your forces deploy? They're already deploying, Marcus said, pulling up a tactical display. 3rd, 5th, and 7th fleets are moving toward Deneb sector as we speak. Another 4 fleets are protecting Imperium territory and supply lines. We have 43 capital ships, 217 cruisers, and over 400 support vessels, all equipped with technology the Scourge hasn't encountered before. That's a fraction of our forces, Ambassador Thesic protested. It's more than enough, Admiral Torres said with quiet confidence. You're about to learn why the Assembly was right to fear humanity. We don't fight like you do. We fight to win whatever that takes. The Battle of Deneb sector began 3 weeks later and would be remembered for 1,000 years. The Scourge arrived in a swarm that blotted out the stars. Over 30,000 organic ships, each one a nightmare of biological engineering and predatory hunger. They had consumed their way across the galaxy for years, and nothing had been able to stop them. The Assembly fleet of 9,000 vessels seemed like a feast waiting to happen. But this time, something was different. The Imperium forces hit the Scourge vanguard before the organic ships could deploy their conversion tendrils. Eclipse-class destroyers fired gravitational lances that tore through biological armor, like it was nothing. Kree mining vessels used industrial cutters to slice Scourge ships into pieces, and human carriers deployed swarms of autonomous drones that overwhelmed the Scourge's organic defenses. Through sheer numbers and adaptability, Admiral Torres commanded the battle from the bridge of the Imperium flagship, watching as his carefully planned strategy unfolded. Unlike the Assembly's attempts at coordinated massive assaults, the Imperium used small strike groups that hit hard and fast, targeting Scourge command nodes and preventing the swarm from coordinating. The assembly fleets are holding the line, reported Lieutenant Chen. They're actually managing to destroy enemy vessels with our support. Torres nodded. The key was that the Imperium ships drew the Scourge's attention, allowing assembly forces to attack from advantageous positions. It was a partnership of sorts, even if the human forces were doing the heavy lifting. The battle raged for 18 hours. Scourge ships kept coming in endless waves, but for every Imperium vessel lost, 100 organic nightmares were destroyed. Human weapons proved devastatingly effective, the remnant technology giving humanity an edge that the Scourge couldn't counter. When the last Scourge ship finally retreated into hyperspace, the silence on the communication channels was deafening. The assembly had just witnessed what real military force looked like when wielded by a species that understood warfare at a fundamental level. All ships report, Torres ordered. The casualty reports came in. 31 Imperium vessels destroyed, 72 damaged but salvageable. From the assembly forces, over 2,000 ships lost. The difference in effectiveness was stark and undeniable. High Chancellor Vorath's communication came through on the command channel. His voice was shaken but filled with something that might have been awe. Admiral Torres, on behalf of the Galactic Assembly, I offer our deepest gratitude. You saved us. Torres looked at the tactical display showing the massive debris field where the Scourge fleet had been annihilated. We saved each other, Chancellor. That's how real alliances work. 3 months after the Battle of Deneb Sector, the Treaty of New Terra was formally signed in the Grand Hall of the Imperium. Representatives from 417 Assembly Worlds watched as Director Elena Vasquez and High Chancellor Vorath sealed humanity's return to galactic civilization. But it was a different return than anyone had imagined. The Galactic Assembly remained, its diplomatic apparatus and economic networks intact. But military authority now fell under the Joint Defense Council, with the Terran Imperium holding final authority in crisis situations. Species that had been rejected from Assembly membership found homes in the Imperium, creating a multi-species empire that rivaled the Assembly in size and exceeded it in military capability. Humanity didn't conquer the galaxy. They saved it, and in doing so, they rewrote the rules that had governed civilized space for 6,000 years. Elena stood at the window of her office, looking out at New Terra's capital city below. It had been 9 months since Captain Reed's trial at Concordia Prime. 9 months since humanity had been cast into exile. In that short time, they had built an empire not through conquest, but through demonstrating that strength and compassion weren't opposites. We were supposed to be barbarians, Marcus said, joining her at the window. Too dangerous for civilized society. Remember? We were dangerous, Elena replied. We still are. But we proved that dangerous doesn't mean evil. Sometimes the galaxy needs people willing to do hard things, make difficult choices, fight battles that need fighting. A communication alert chimed. Captain Rachel Park's face appeared on the screen, her expression excited despite the fading scars from the Scourge attack on Frontier Station. Director, you need to see this. We've just received first contact request from 17 species in the Perseus Arm. They heard about the Battle of Deneb Sector and want to know more about the Terran Imperium. Elena exchanged a look with Marcus, 17 new species seeking them out, not fleeing from them. The galaxy was learning that humanity offered something the Assembly never could, protection backed by genuine strength. Set up meetings with all of them, Elena ordered, and Rachel, make sure they understand what we're about. We're not building an empire of subjects. We're building a coalition of partners. Understood, Director. There's one more thing. The Kree have found 3 more remnant sites in unexplored space. Commander Zhao thinks one of them might be a central archive, a library of everything the remnant knew before they vanished. Elena felt her pulse quicken. The remnant had been a civilization that spanned galaxies, with technology that made current science look primitive. If they had left behind their accumulated knowledge, accessible and intact, it would change everything. Tell Zhao she has full authorization and unlimited resources. Whatever's in that archive, we need to find it before anyone else does. Park's image vanished, leaving Elena and Marcus alone with their thoughts. Outside the window, New Terra continued its rotation, cities glowing in the gathering dusk. Above them, the orbital ring bristled with shipyards working around the clock, building the vessels that would protect this fragile new order. Do you think the Assembly understands what they created when they exiled us? Marcus asked quietly. Elena considered the question carefully. I think they're beginning to. They thought they were removing a problem, but they were actually breaking our chains. Every rule we followed as assembly members, every restriction on our military development, every diplomatic compromise that slowed us down, all of it gone the moment they cast us out. And now we're stronger than them. Now we're what we always had the potential to be, Elena corrected. The assembly tried to make us into something we weren't. Peaceful, patient, willing to talk instead of act. But humanity evolved through conflict, survival, adaptation. You can't train that out of a species in 50 years. Marcus moved to the strategic display, pulling up the current galactic map. The Terran Imperium's territory was marked in blue, spreading across regions the assembly had never explored. Assembly space showed in green, still vast but no longer the only power that mattered. Between them, a patchwork of independent systems and smaller powers, many now looking toward the Imperium with interest rather than fear. The treaty gives us joint military authority, but everyone knows what that really means, Marcus said. When the next crisis comes, they'll call us. When pirates need to be stopped, they'll call us. When someone needs to make hard decisions that the assembly can't stomach, they'll call us. And we'll answer, Elena said. Not because we're conquerors or because we want to dominate the galaxy, but because someone has to. The assembly had 6,000 years to build something that could protect civilization. They built a bureaucracy instead. We've had 9 months and we've built an empire. A new alert chimed, this one from Deep Space Monitoring. Lieutenant Chen's voice came through, tense with urgency. Director, we're picking up anomalous readings from the galactic edge. Multiple signatures consistent with Scourge ships, but the energy patterns are different, stronger. Elena and Marcus rushed to the command center, where displays showed sensor data from probe networks positioned throughout Imperium space. What they revealed made Elena's blood run cold. The Scourge weren't retreating. They were regrouping. Those aren't the same ships we fought at Deneb, Commander Zhao reported, analyzing the data streams. These are larger, more complex. The Scourge we destroyed were scouts, maybe even workers. These readings suggest command vessels, possibly even the Scourge equivalent of capital ships. How many? Elena demanded. At least 500,000 contacts. Maybe more. They're still emerging from wherever they've been hiding. The number hit like a physical blow. The 30,000 Scourge ships at Deneb had nearly overwhelmed the combined Assembly and Imperium forces. 500,000 would be an extinction-level threat. Get me the Joint Defense Council, Elena ordered, and activate all reserve fleets. If those things are coming for us, we need every ship we have. Within hours, the emergency session convened with representatives from both the Assembly and Imperium. The holographic displays showed the massing Scourge fleet in horrifying detail. They were organizing themselves in the void between galaxies, building strength before their next assault. High Chancellor Vorath's image appeared alongside Elena's, both leaders addressing the Council simultaneously. We face a threat beyond anything in recorded history, Vorath announced. The Scourge are not a raiding force or even an invasion fleet. They are a galactic cleansing event, something that emerges periodically to consume advanced civilizations before they can spread too far. The remnant left records, Commander Zhao added, her voice tight with tension. We found them in the archive. 50,000 years ago they fought the Scourge and lost. Their entire civilization, spanning multiple galaxies, was consumed in less than a century. They left warning markers throughout space trying to tell whoever came next what to expect. And we ignored those markers, Ambassador Thesic said bitterly. We thought they were natural phenomena or religious monuments. We never imagined they were warnings. Elena studied the tactical projections. 500,000 Scourge ships against a combined force of perhaps 15,000 Assembly and Imperium vessels. The mathematics were brutal. Even with the Imperium's technological advantage, they would be overwhelmed by sheer numbers. We can't win a conventional battle, Admiral Torres said, voicing what everyone was thinking. Not against those odds. We need a different approach. The Remnant Archive mentioned something, Zhao said hesitantly. A weapon they were developing before they fell. They called it the Stellar Crucible. It was designed to manipulate star formation on a massive scale, creating artificial supernovas that could sterilize entire sectors of space. The implications silenced the room. A weapon that could destroy whole star systems was as much a threat to its users as to its enemies. It was the kind of power that civilizations built in desperation and regretted forever. If we use something like that, we're no better than the Scourge, General Mitchell protested. We'd be committing genocide on a scale that makes their consumption look merciful. We wouldn't use it on inhabited systems, Marcus said quietly. We'd use it to create a barrier, draw the Scourge into empty space and trigger artificial supernovas that destroy them in chain reactions, turn the void itself into a weapon. Elena looked at the faces around the council table, human and alien alike. They were all thinking the same thing. To defeat an extinction threat, they might have to become one themselves. The Remnant had the same debate, Zhao said softly. According to their records, they chose not to use the Stellar Crucible. They thought they could win through conventional means. Within 50 years, their entire civilization was gone. Then we won't make their mistake, Elena said, her voice cutting through the tension. We'll build the weapon. We'll prepare the battlefield. And when the Scourge come, we'll show them why they should have left this galaxy alone. The vote passed unanimously. Both Assembly and Imperium representatives agreed, some reluctantly, others with grim determination. The galaxy's greatest minds would work together to construct the Remnant's ultimate weapon, hoping they would have the wisdom to use it correctly. Construction began immediately. The Stellar Crucible wasn't a single device, but a network of gravitational manipulators positioned around young stars in uninhabited systems. When activated, they would compress the star's cores, triggering premature supernovas that would cascade across sectors of space in a planned sequence. The work took 3 months of around-the-clock effort. Human engineers worked alongside Kree cyborgs and assembly scientists, building something that terrified everyone involved. The weapon was capable of sterilizing hundreds of star systems in minutes, turning vast reaches of space into radiation-scorched wasteland where nothing could survive. It's ready, Commander Zhao reported to Elena as they stood in the control station overlooking the gravitational network. We've run every simulation we can. The cascade will work. When we activate it, everything in a sphere 60 light-years across will die, including any Scourge ships caught in the blast, Elena said. Including anything caught in the blast, Zhao corrected. This weapon doesn't discriminate. If somehow there are civilian ships or hidden colonies in that space, they'll die too. Elena stared at the controls that could end so much life with a single command. This was the burden of power, the weight of decisions that couldn't be unmade. The Assembly had avoided this responsibility for millennia by refusing to build weapons capable of such destruction. Now humanity had built it in 3 months. The Scourge are moving, reported Lieutenant Chen from the tactical station. 500,000 ships just entered hyperspace. Projected destination, the Galactic Core. They're going for the heart of civilization. All fleets to defensive positions, Elena ordered. Draw them toward the barrier zone. Make them think we're retreating. The final battle began 2 weeks later in the Omega Sector, an empty region of space chosen specifically for its lack of inhabitable worlds. The combined forces of the Imperium and Assembly waited there, deliberately positioned to look vulnerable and desperate. When the Scourge fleet emerged from hyperspace, the organic ship spread across the void like a plague made visible. 500,000 vessels that pulsed with bioluminescent hunger, their conversion tendrils already extending toward the defending fleets. Comment for next part.